Jochen Zeitz is retiring as CEO of Harley Davidson at some point in 2025, and there has been some turmoil in the front offices of the motor company as outlined in my last video. I'll leave a link to that in the top right corner. To summarize, Jared Dourdeville recently resigned from the board of directors at Harley Davidson and wrote a scathing letter about mismanagement of the company, which I'll link in the description below, along with Harley Davidson's official response. However, this video will not dwell on the past or the finger pointing that's going on. The fact is that Harley sales and profits are down and are not projected to rebound anytime soon, which is a shame because I like the bikes and would love to see the company succeed. To add insult to injury, other retro classic motorcycle manufacturers are enjoying great success. 2025 might be the year in which Royal Enfield passes 1 million sales, and might also be the year in which Triumph, the new revived Triumph which started selling bikes in the early 90s, not the original Triumph that released its first motorcycle in 1902, may outsell Harley Davidson, which has been in continuous existence for 122 years. Who would have thought that possible 5 years ago? I have a video about that as well, check it out in the top right corner. But this video will focus on the things Harley Davidson needs to do in order to turn things around. What products does it need to keep, throw away, and introduce? What culture does it need to foster, and how does it advertise its bikes, especially to young riders? In short, how does it sell more bikes, make larger profits, and regain its mojo, so to speak? I've got a few ideas, and if you want to add your own, feel free to do so in the comments below. I have it on good authority that marketers at Harley Davidson pay attention to videos like these and their comment sections. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. First, a word on tariffs. Yes, they're in the news right now, but I believe that they're a temporary negotiating tactic. If they're pulled back once the negotiations are done, things go back to normal. If they're permanent, then this becomes a new reality for everyone all over the world, and everyone has to adjust. No use crying about it. If fewer people outside the US buy Harleys, hopefully more buy Harleys in the US, especially if retaliatory tariffs are slapped on foreign bikes. Conversely, to avoid those tariffs, there's a possibility that Europe scales back its tariffs on Harleys, which currently stand at 56%. Either way, this video will focus on things Harley Davidson can control, and hopefully the rest will be resolved in due time. So yes, sales and profits are down and have been on a steady decline basically since 2006. Additionally, the perception is, rightfully or wrongfully, that Harleys are no longer symbols of rebellion and counterculture that they used to be, but rather very expensive status symbols marketed to older rich professionals who want to cosplay at being one-percenters on the weekends. And for a company that relies on its heritage and image to sell motorcycles, that is a very bad perception to foster. You don't want young people associating Harleys with old people. However, Harley does have strengths and advantages no other company has, and it can leverage these and build on them. 1. Harley Davidson is still the biggest name in motorcycling with a huge presence in movies, TV shows, and popular culture in general. 2. Harley still looks, sound, and feel like nothing else on the road, and any company that tries to replicate that will simply be accused of copying Harley. The Japanese have tried, but their clones never quite gained traction. Finally, it's American, which means that it, along with Indian, are the only choices for folks who want to support American industry and workers. And there are some things that Harley is doing well which don't need too much addressing right now. The main thing are its tourers and cruisers. The touring and softail platforms have both received substantial upgrades in the last couple of years and will remain competitive and desirable for years to come. The only change I would make here is to bring back some of the less pricey models. One perfect example of this is the standard Road King. Most people I talk to prefer the standard to the Road King Special, which is the only Road King on sale today. This is a bike that harkens back to the big tourers of the past, and the standard looks way more like the original FLH bikes than the Special. People in the 1950s wanted shiny, chrome-laden bikes, not the blacked-out treatment which is more popular today. Reserve the blacked-out look for bikes like the Lowrider S and keep the Road King shiny and more accessible price-wise. Aside from that, there are a few easy things Harley Davidson can do right away to start addressing some of the criticisms levied by Jared Dourdeville in his exit letter. One is to foster greater community among its white-collar workers by ending work-from-home policies. Harley Davidson has stated that this policy allows them to recruit international talent that does not reside near the front office, but my feeling is that A company which brands itself as uniquely American should be pursuing American talent, and B, that employees who share an office and interact with each other on a daily basis will be more engaged and immersed in the culture the company is trying to promote. This is especially crucial in the marketing department, which needs to be plugged into American culture and be bouncing ideas off of each other in an office setting. Americans will know how to sell American bikes best. We'll get to how they will sell those bikes later in this video. Easy fix number 2, Harley Davidson needs to either dump or completely revamp Livewire, its electric spin-off that was selling so poorly it had to be separated under its own umbrella. The problem here is not that the bikes are bad, but rather that nobody wants big, heavy, and very expensive high-performance motorcycles with limited range. Electric motorcycles work best when they are small, cheap, and used as urban commuters. That or dirt bikes that don't require the intensive maintenance and frequent oil and filter changes of other high-performance dirt machines. Sur-Ron does a pretty good job with its Light B and Ultra B in the dirt bike department, while Royal Enfield is releasing a stylish city runabout called the Flying Flea soon. Harley Davidson should take the technical know-how they've picked up from Livewire and apply it to motorcycles more suited to the electric motor. Either that or take the L and move on. Next, how many Sportster S's and Nightsters have you seen out on the roads? Exactly. If you answered 0, you're tied with me. The only place I see these bikes is gathering dust on showroom floors. And again, they're not bad bikes, but they do not look, sound, or feel like traditional Harleys. And while Harleys sell because of their uniqueness, the Sportsters have to compete with other motorcycles on performance, features, and price alone. When a Harley is not shaking and making a potato sound, the name on the tank matters less. Why should someone buy a Nightster over a Honda Rebel 1100 when they are very similar and the Rebel is less expensive to buy, service, and outfit with accessories and arguably more reliable? Here's the solution. Rename these bikes V-Rods and sell them outside of North America where performance counts for more than character. Since its cancellation, the V-Rod name has gained a bit of a cult status, and these bikes are the natural evolution of the V-Rod, not the air-cooled Evo Sportsters. And speaking of which, bring back the air-cooled Evo Sportsters. But they won't pass emissions. Sure they will. SWM is selling the Evo Sportster clone in Italy, and that bike passed emissions. How did it do it? By choking it up a bit more at the cost of a few stock horsepower. So what? No one buys an Evo Sportster for the horsepower. Almost everyone who buys these bikes replaces the exhaust, air filter, and ECU. Boom, problem solved. The extra horsepower is back, and now the bike can be sold to the public again. Now you might argue that the old Evos are technological dinosaurs, that they are underpowered and handle poorly compared to modern cruisers like the Nightster, that they are heavy and not very comfortable, and that if they had been selling well in the first place, Harley would still be selling them. And every one of these points is true, but those shortcomings can be overcome. Yes, they are inferior in terms of performance, but if that mattered to the average Harley buyer, the Moco would have gone under a long time ago. The fact is that the old Evos are superior in terms of character and people are passionate about them. And in the West, passion sells motorcycles, or at least it will if you market them properly. In the richer countries around the world, almost no one buys motorcycles for their practicality. People buy them for either performance or image. And while the old Evos don't have the performance, they sure have the image. In fact, you could lean into that image harder by stripping them down completely and making them all about image. No fancy gauges, no electronics other than ABS, no extra frills of any kind. Slap on the old minimalist gauges from the Street Bob and Lowrider ST on them, make them chain drive and solid mount the engine, put on some ape hangers and tall sissy bars and simple wire-spoked wheels, make them look as much as possible like something someone built in their garage in 1983. Hell, you don't even need to paint the tank. And offer them up for sub 9K US. Yes, they'll shake your fillings loose and get their butts kicked by Indian, Triumph, and Honda in the performance department, but nobody will associate them with Rubs, the rich urban bikers who ride the $50,000 CVOs. They will be infinitely more cool and desirable to many customers than the sanitized, techie motorcycles sold by everyone else, precisely because they will be different. Make one with a 16-inch front wheel and one with a 21-inch one. Give them tiny, impractical tanks that moto journalists will complain about. Put them front and center in the dealerships and market them to young people. And market them right. The thing about Harley Davidson marketing is that it's generally aimed at old-timers. The bikes are expensive and the feeling is that only the old farts will be able to afford them. And when younger riders are depicted, many are riding older used bikes. The message is clear. If you don't have a lot of money, don't go looking for a new Harley. And that message has to change. Harley Davidson has become too corporate lately, and it's about time it got back in touch with its past. There was a time when people did not need an 800-pound bagger to go touring and see something cool. You can go camping on a Sportster, head out to a concert or a festival like Sturgis with your friends, couch surfing or staying in a farmer's barn on the way. You can get a bunch of scruffy 20-somethings to strap their tents to their tall sissy bars and strike out on historic Route 66 in search of adventure. They'd camp for free under the stars on public land, stop at rivers to wash up, and explore cool, out-of-the-way places that don't appear in the official list of attractions. Their hands would be buzzing from the vibration of their solid-mounted Evo motors, they'd have to carry extra bottles of fuel to supplement their tiny tanks, and the lack of windshields would have them eating bugs the entire way. In short, they would be doing what generations before them did on Harleys, before the company convinced us that everyone wanting to tour needed to get a $30,000+ bagger with NASA-level electronics. And that trip would suck in many ways. Those riders would get soaked with every rainfall, they'd be sore and hurting after every full day in the saddle, and they would have to brave extreme temperatures and all kinds of weather both during the day on their bikes and at night in their tents. Yeah, it would suck, but it would suck in a glorious way, because anyone who's ever been young and headed out on an adventure, naive and ill-prepared, has way more stories than they would if they'd stayed at fancy hotels the entire way. There's your ad campaign. Young people today are overly safe, overly pampered and protected, and many of them are looking for something raw and elemental so that they can feel alive again. And video games and the endless TikTok doom scroll ain't gonna do it. Feel alive again. There's your motto. If you are going to market to anyone, target the demographic that will become your future. Young men and maybe some women who are drawn to the open road and the adventure it offers. Ducati has done this already with the Land of Joy campaign they used to advertise their scramblers when they came out 10 years ago. That campaign was so successful that the Scrambler line spun off into its own division, and the Land of Joy slogan is still being used today, 10 years later. Additionally, Royal Enfield had a very successful launch of its twin-cylinder models in 2019 by depicting young people enjoying themselves on simple, good-looking motorcycles. Harley doesn't even need to be as clean as Ducati or Royal Enfield. It could court some controversy by showing its riders getting really wild, something like in the Lana Del Rey video Ride. I'll drop a link below. Nothing like a little bit of controversy and political incorrectness to drive a video viral on YouTube. It's Harley Davidson, not Honda, and people in the ads don't need to be nice. Lean into the rebel image. The worst thing that Harley could be is not politically incorrect, but boring. And yes, I know that there are already people camping and exploring on their Sportster-sized bikes and putting out videos about it. This is exactly why Harley needs to cash in on this by offering new motorcycles that young riders can afford and then showing people using them in this way. They'd sell a lot of units, and even if those units didn't have the big margins of the more expensive bikes, there would also be the accessory sales, service, and financing money rolling in. And perhaps most important of all, there would be a new generation of young riders already under the Harley umbrella who would someday buy Softails and baggers. That's the shot in the arm that Harley Davidson needs in the marketing and new bike department, and that's perhaps the most important way it could improve. But there is one final thing the company needs to change, and that's the dealership department. Harley dealers are not allowed to carry other brands, and multi-brand dealers can't carry Harleys, and that's gone from being an advantage to a drag. Back in the days when everyone wanted a Harley, it made sense not to let the competition into your dealerships to steal Harley sales. Isolating yourself when you're number one is fine when you can't keep the bikes on dealership floors they're selling out so fast. Isolating yourself when sales are in freefall accelerates the freefall. My local Harley dealer is empty, while just down the street, the largest multi-brand dealer in the Toronto area, a dealer who carries Honda, BMW, Ducati, Indian, Triumph, KTM, Husqvarna, GasGas, and MV Agusta, is always full. And all of those brands are in front of the eyeballs of those browsing customers. In this environment, isolating yourself runs the risk of being forgotten or not even being considered. Harley Davidson has spent a long time building this model for its dealership network, and dismantling it will also be a long-term project. But this is not a winning strategy in the long term because people are just not walking into these dealerships the way they used to. It's not 2006 anymore. Carrying other brands will bring in more customers who will then be exposed to Harleys they would otherwise have not seen. Harley needs to address this. Any other final thoughts? Sure. A low-priced XR750 flat-track inspired scrambler would be cool. These kinds of bikes have done well for Ducati and Triumph. Also, if Harley ever builds the Bronx, it needs to be a 1250 because the 975 won't be able to compete with bikes like the Yamaha MT-09 on price or performance. And finally, if a mid-sized Pan America ever comes to market, it needs to be a completely new model, not just a regular Pan America with a 975 engine. That bike could never compete with the middleweight class because it'd be too heavy. Build something adventure riders want and they will come. That's a long video, sorry about that. I guess there's a lot to fix. If you're still here, thanks for watching. I'm interested in your thoughts about this subject, so please feel free to share them along with your own suggestions in the comments below. Can Harley turn things around? I think it's possible. Just look at what Royal Enfield has achieved in a few short years. As always, thanks for watching. Check out some of these other videos you might find interesting. Ride safe, and may the spokes be with you.